Folks, I absolutely love Thrive Market. For just $5 a month, you get access to a curated selection of organic and non-GMO brands. They have over 90 dietary filters, weekly sales, free gifts. It's one annual fee with priceless peace of mind. And my wife and I have found so many good things on Thrive Market that have just become staples. I love the Good Crisp Company crisps, the original, the sour cream. That's one of my go-to snacks. My wife loves the Smash Foods fruit spreads. They come in a variety, but it's all better for you than what you would find at your local grocery store. Thrive Market restricts over 1,000 ingredients, so you don't have to stress over labels. And you don't have to go to Google to look up every additive. They also have an in-app barcode scanner, which finds a healthier swap for almost anything that's in your pantry right now. And at $5 a month, the membership pays for itself. Most members make that back in their first 2 orders. Member pricing is up to 30% off. They have weekly sales, free gifts, and free delivery on qualifying orders. Ready to do your own spring reset? Join Thrive Market with our link, thrivemarket.com/TCATT for 20% off your first 3 orders. Plus, you'll receive a free $60 gift. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 486 of the True Crime All the Time podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Yo, what's up? What's happening?
All right.
I
like the intro. You're always thinking of interesting things to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or interesting in your mind.
Well, it's always very interesting or captivating. Or,
you never know how it's going to play.
Probably not good.
Yeah, sometimes good, sometimes not so good.
We really like when Gibby just sticks to how he normally opens up the show, please.
No, I think they like it when you go out on a limb.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and give our Patreon shout outs. We had Penny.
Hey, Penny.
Corez SC.
Well, let's see. What's SC? Like soccer club or?
South Carolina? I don't know.
Yeah.
Kira Godomsky.
Hey, Godomsky.
Jacqueline.
What's going on, Jacqueline?
Matt Hendershot.
Hey, Matt.
Bill Knox.
Well, appreciate that, Knox.
Todd Bird.
Well, wonder if anybody ever gives him the bird.
They might.
The bird.
Kirsten Vanderjat.
Well, that's a mouthful. Vanderjock.
No.
Vanderjock.
I mean, you might be saying it correctly. You're not saying what I said, but
Vanderjock.
You might be saying it right. Annalise Laranga.
Hey, Annalise.
And last but not least, Lucia Figueres jumped out to her highest level.
Oh, Figueres.
Yeah. And then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Molly Hildebrand.
Yeah, good golly, Miss Molly.
So we appreciate the new support, the continued support. We've got a great lineup out right now on Unsolved, which is out already.
Yeah.
We're talking about 23-year-old David Grubbs, who was murdered along a popular bike path in Oregon in 2011 while he was heading home from work. So, we're 15 years later.
Yeah.
And despite police naming a person of interest, which is always fascinating to me in unsolved cases.
Absolutely.
His murder remains unsolved.
And it's Oregon.
Yeah, according to you. And the episode for TCAT Thursday is one that I just found fascinating. Nobody gets murdered, yet we're still talking about murder and mayhem, and it all revolves around this guy named Bob Ennis, who kind of benignly purchased a domain named rentahitman.com.
Yeah.
And soon discovered that he had a whole bunch of people trying to hire hitmen.
It's a serious episode, but I couldn't help but laugh.
There were some humorous parts to it, even though you're talking about someone trying to end the life of other people. All right, buddy, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time?
I am.
We're talking about the Clear Lake murders. In July 2003, 4 friends were gunned down inside a home in the Clear Lake area of Houston The community was shocked and devastated that 4 young lives were brutally cut short. The fact that police couldn't identify the perpetrators only added to the pain and confusion that the victims' families and friends experienced. 3 years later, though, a Crimestoppers tip led to the identification of a surprising suspect.
Always like surprises.
Well, we have changed up how we do true crime all the time a little bit. We've added some mystery, which people have asked us to do.
Sure.
And I kind of like the way it works.
Yeah, you do.
You don't know all the time, right from the beginning, who done it.
Or who did it?
I like to say who done it.
I know you
because they call it a who done it.
What is a who done it?
The victims of the Clear Lake murders were 18-year-old Rachael Koloroutis, 18-year-old Tiffany Rowell, 19-year-old Marcus Precella, and 20-year-old Adelbert Sanchez. On July 18, 2003, police responded to Tiffany Rowell's home in the 3700 block of Millbridge in the Quiet Brook Forest subdivision of Clear Lake. Tiffany grew up in this home. Her mother died of cancer in 1998. Her father, Chester, remarried and moved to his wife's home in Manville, Texas. But Tiffany remained at the Clear Lake house so that she wouldn't have to change schools her senior year.
Well, that makes sense.
It does, and a lot of people do that, right? I get it. Something changes in the family dynamic, but who really, going into their senior year, wants to have to change school?
Well, and I think it's important, especially if you're in your last year or two, to stay as stable as possible.
Yeah, you know what kids like a lot? Stability.
Yeah.
Now, they don't always get it, but they like it.
I think most people like stability.
I would say everybody does, really. For the past 3 years, Tiffany had been dating Marcus Precella, a graduate of Clear Lake High. Friends said that they seemed happy together. Tiffany was described as someone who was friendly, lovable, and always had a smile on her face. She was a talented actress and wanted to be a social worker. She was best friends with Rachael Koloroutis, who enjoyed art and creative writing. Rachael was undecided on which college she wanted to attend and was considering joining the military. And, at that age, Gibbs, when you're in your senior year or you're getting ready to graduate, man, there are so many options to think about.
There really are.
Now, some people take the route of going to college. Some people decide, hey, college is not for me. Maybe they want to go into the trades or they want to join the military. But really, there are limitless options for people.
Yeah, possibilities.
Yeah.
It's always good to have those.
Rachael and Tiffany were some of the most popular girls at Clear Lake High. They had just graduated in May 2003, only 2 months before they died. That summer, Tiffany and Rachael got jobs bartending and waiting tables at Club Exotica, a topless bar on the Gulf Freeway. Rachael spent a lot of time at Tiffany's house and moved in with her just 2 weeks before the murders. The Houston Chronicle reported that Rachael ran away from her parents' home, and they were looking for her at the time of her death.
Oh, okay. So she was missing.
But not surprising, right, that Rachael would go to Tiffany's house. Tiffany's living in this big house all by herself, and the two had been friends, best friends, for a long time.
Just makes sense.
Marcus Precella was attending San Jacinto College and finishing up coursework for an automotive technology certificate. He decided to enroll in fall classes to pursue a business degree while working part-time as a waiter at a seafood restaurant. Marcus loved working on his car and spending time with his family and Tiffany. His family knew Tiffany well, and they thought highly of her. Like Rachael, Marcus also spent a lot of time at Tiffany's home in Clear Lake.
Sounds like it was the house to be at.
Well, you're 18, 19 years old, and you got a house? Okay, that's a pretty big deal.
It is a big deal.
Marcus's cousin, Adelbert Sanchez, loved rap music and sang with a local group. He planned to go to college and study computer technology. He lived at home in North Houston until the week he was killed. He decided to go and stay with Marcus for a while, and the whole group ended up staying at Tiffany's home. And again, right, why not? She's living in this house, however big it is, she's there by herself.
Yeah.
I'm sure quite a number of people could have stayed there, and it sounds like they did. But to me, it's also about decisions, fateful decisions, right? Not bad decisions per se, but in the case of, Adelbert, he decides to go see his cousin, and it would ultimately turn out to be fateful for him. Friends said that they were having the time of their lives. The night before the murders, Marcus and Adelbert went to a party. Two of those party guests returned with them to Tiffany's house, but left well before the murders. Those guests were interviewed and cleared by police.
Consider them lucky.
Well, they're going to be talked to and have to be cleared. And in this case, they were. Tiffany and Rachael worked the night of July 17th and returned to the house early on the morning of July 18th, 2003, when they were killed later that afternoon. The four victims had just woken up and were in the living room watching TV. Around 2:30 p.m., two people were seen going to the house. They were described as a man and a woman, both young and both wearing all black, despite the hot summer day. The man was blonde, and the woman had her hair covered by a cap and was carrying a large bag.
Okay. I mean, that is suspicious. I mean, you're in Texas, a hot summer day, and you're wearing all black.
Yeah, it gets very hot in Houston in the summer.
Yeah.
And it would be weird to see somebody dressed in all black, or two people.
Right.
Even more strange.
Unless they were named Johnny
Cash.
Yeah.
Police believe the victims were killed between 3 and 3:30 p.m. when neighbors reported hearing noises that could have been gunfire. And it's interesting, Gibbs, because you and I talk about this a lot. People hearing something, let's say from, down the road, another house, a neighboring house, they think it could be gunfire, could be a car backfiring. They don't know exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So what do? Do you pick up the phone and say, hey, police, I think I hear gunshots? I know where I live, people don't do that.
No.
Because there are gunshots. I hear them all the time.
I don't think that many people actually call into the police anymore.
And I think there's a reason for it. Probably first and foremost, people don't want to be wrong. You don't want to waste the police's time when it turns out to be nothing. And let's face it, most of the time, it probably is nothing.
Yeah.
The problem is when it's something, well, then the police get involved later than what they could have. But it's hard to make that argument that somebody, made a serious error in not calling. Unless they were for sure it was gunshots, and
that's different.
That would be different. Unless you live in a more rural area like I do, there's plenty of land around me, and people do shoot guns. I hear them.
Sure, I do when I leave here.
There have been times where it's come through the episode and I've had to edit it out.
Well, that's true.
At 6:30 p.m., friends who stopped by the home ran outside screaming that people had been shot. Neighbors entered the home and recalled to the Houston Chronicle that they initially thought the man and woman on the couch were just watching TV until they saw bullet holes in their heads and blood throughout the living room.
It's almost like one of those movies by that really good director.
Tarantino?
Yeah.
That's where I figured you were going.
It's like a scene from one of his movies, you're walking in and they look like they're just watching TV until you see all the way through their head the light.
But no doubt this would be a very scary thing, right, to have happen. I'm sure these neighbors were concerned, I guess, maybe because of what they had heard, which is weird because I just said, well, they didn't call the police. But at some point they must have figured, hey, we should go over and check on them.
Just make sure, peek in, see what we can see.
The victims were sitting up with their heads bowed as if they were asleep. The house was silent except for the TV. On the floor was a young woman laying face down in a pool of blood. A man was behind the couch. There were no signs of forced entry. Police couldn't tell if anything had been stolen.
Well, just because there wasn't forced entry doesn't mean the door could have just been unlocked.
Could have been, or they could have let their killers in.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a direct possibility. The forced entry is always interesting because obviously if you have forced entry, if the door frame is busted as though someone kicked it in, well, that tells you something. But the absence of forced entry, I don't know that it tells you as much. The victims were killed in a swift and unprovoked attack, as reported by the Houston Chronicle. Adelbert and Tiffany weren't able to get off the couch before they were killed. Tiffany was shot 7 times throughout her body, including the head and face. Adelbert was shot 6 times in the head, neck, torso, arm, and shoulder. Marcus died from wounds to the head, abdomen, and right arm. He also had blunt force head injuries. Rachael died from blunt force to the head and had gunshots to her lower abdomen and lower extremities. I mean, just picture this. This is an absolutely brutal crime scene.
Yeah, it sounds like a kill squad went in there.
Earlier that day, Rachel's parents drove to the Brook Forest area and went past Tiffany's house. They heard from one of Rachel's friends that she might be staying in the house and had driven through the subdivision hoping for a glimpse of her. And we said it, right? Her parents weren't sure where Rachael was in the week kind of leading up to her death. I did think about it, though, with her and Tiffany being such good friends, her parents probably had to know that Tiffany was living there by herself, that her dad had moved, and they had to have at least a sneaking suspicion that maybe Rachael was there.
I would think so.
In the days after the murders, there was talk among the victims' friends that the deaths were drug-related. Witnesses told investigators that Adelbert and Marcus were allegedly drug dealers, and people came to the house to buy from them. Police acknowledged that drugs were used, bought, and sold among the 4 friends and others, but maintained that the motive was unknown. And I think anytime you have drugs, that has to be a possible motive. If you add in the fact that there's even the possibility that someone was selling drugs, well, then I think that motive gets a little bit more, higher on the possibility list, because when you're selling drugs, then there's money involved and more motive.
Yeah, I mean, you have to worry about that. If they're selling drugs, you also have to worry about, are they pushing into somebody else's territory, taking money away from that dealer?
Somebody who maybe is way bigger than them and more ruthless.
Yeah.
That's a real possibility. But a year passed with no answers. The Houston Chronicle reported that police had followed many fruitless leads. Talking about the murders was too painful for the families to do in-person interviews, but they agreed to answer questions from the Chronicle via email. Adelbert Sanchez's stepmother, who helped raise him, wrote, "I don't know how to explain our pain and suffering. It has broken our hearts." Rachel's father, George, wrote, "This pain can't be handled. It's the worst pain life has to offer." And I cannot even imagine, Gibbs, losing a child. I just can't, especially in this type of horrific fashion.
Yeah, it would definitely be rough.
This time of year always makes me rethink what's in my closet. I'm trying to keep fewer things, but better ones. Pieces that are well made and easy to wear all the time. That's why I keep coming back to Quince. The fabrics feel elevated, the fits are thoughtful, and the pricing actually makes sense. Quince makes high-quality, everyday essentials using premium materials like 100% European and linen. And their insanely soft, flow-knit activewear fabric. Their men's linen pants and shirts are lightweight, breathable, and comfortable. Basically the perfect layer for spring. And their flow-knit activewear is my absolute favorite. I love their shorts, their pants, their tops. It's moisture-wicking, anti-odor, and soft enough that you'll actually want to wear it all day. And I do. Actually wearing it right now as I record this ad. The best part is that their prices are 50 to 60% less than similar brands. How? Quince works directly with ethical factories and cuts out the middlemen, so you're paying for quality, not brand markup. Everything is designed to last and make getting dressed easy. Refresh your wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/TCAT for free shipping and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. Go to QUINCE.com/TCATT for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/TCAT. Investigators noted that they were still seeking the two people who visited the home on the afternoon of the murders. They also wanted to hear from a caller who contacted Crimestoppers in early May 2004 with a tip that may have referred to the two visitors. So police know about these two individuals. They have to be at the top or near the top, right, of the people that they want to identify and talk to. Hard not to believe that there's a real strong chance that they were either somehow involved or were the perpetrators.
So you got to follow through.
But they don't know who they are. Houston Police Sergeant Wayman Allen said at a press conference in June 2004 that any potential motives were of little importance without suspects. And that's an interesting statement because a lot of times you talk about motives leading to suspects. And here he's saying, well, people are throwing around motives, but we don't have any suspects, so
can't tie them together.
Doesn't really do us much good. He noted that the victims were all very young, very immature, and on their own. But he said, while they may have exercised bad judgment, they didn't deserve what happened to them.
I mean, to be, 18, 19, living in a big house in Clear Lake, probably living it up, not really thinking a lot about the consequences of life. And
or what could go wrong.
Yeah.
But you and I have been pretty honest, sometimes brutally honest about, some of the decisions we made when we were 18, 19. And I'm sure a lot of people listening would say, oh my gosh, I made some horrible decisions and did some things that I surely wouldn't do today. And then they would say, well, don't call me Shirley. But, who's not immature at 18, 19? Now, not everybody, but to some degree, most of us were in some ways.
I'm sure there's probably somebody listening that had to go on to an ankle monitor system.
Mm-hmm. When they were young.
Yeah.
And then again, when they were in their 30s.
Yeah, potentially.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
The victims' families never stopped searching for answers. Rachel's father, George Koloroutis, printed and handed out flyers to local residents, and he put up multiple billboards along the Houston highway to raise awareness about the case. He offered a $100,000 reward for information. And that's amazing work. Now, you have to be able to do that. You have to have the resources to be able to do that. And not every family member does. But if you do, there's probably not many of us that wouldn't go to that extent.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing that he did.
Rachel's mom, Ann Koloroutis, said about her husband's effort, per 2020, he was able to think with his head when all I wanted to do was think with my heart. But George never gave up.
I mean, it sounds like he was kind of like the glue, trying to keep the family together through this tragic time.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But, the other thing is, I'm sure he was emotional, but he was also able to kind of continue to plow forward with, a lot of critical thought.
Yeah.
And some people just aren't able to do that. The emotions kind of overwhelm them.
I think it'd be hard to keep a level head, but like you said, there are people that in events like this, they find a way to keep that, level head.
George said, I thought that would have a really meaningful and loud impact on the community, and it would make these killers come out from hiding. And we've talked about rewards a lot, especially the amount of reward.
Right.
In Australian cases, we often see very, very high rewards. Now, here in the US, by and large, in comparison, most rewards, unless the family is well off and they're putting it up themselves, most rewards are pretty small.
Yeah.
5,000, maybe 10,000. Very rarely do you see rewards go into the triple digits, right? Hundreds of thousands of dollars. And why does that make a difference?
Well, I mean, I think the more you offer, the more potential people will come out of the bushes.
Yeah, I think the higher reward, the greater the chance that someone is willing to come forward and maybe roll on over somebody else.
Yeah, because there's some risk there, right? If you're going
Always.
to, tell on somebody, you're going to want to make sure that you're compensated for it.
3 years after the murders, in July 2006, a man called Crimestoppers with a promising tip. He provided details only known to investigators, such as how Rachael tried to crawl away after she was shot and the fact that a phone was found near her hand. So I'm assuming that, these were details that were not publicized at all, right? We talk about what do police keep back? What do they hold back from the public? And this is one of the reasons why.
Yeah, it makes confirming some of these stories a lot easier.
The tipster named 2 perpetrators, a man and a woman. He thought the man's name was Chris, but he was certain about the woman's identity. She was Christine Paella, a former classmate of Rachael and Tiffany at Clear Lake High. They were shot by Christine's boyfriend at the time in a drug deal gone wrong. And Christine Paella was only 17 years old at the time of the murders. She was a grade below Rachael and Tiffany.
Just a kid.
Crystal had a difficult childhood. Her father died in a construction job site accident when she was a child, and her mother, Lori, struggled with drug abuse. Growing up, Christine was bullied because she has alopecia and had to wear wigs to school. And we talk about bullying all the time. I know it does still happen. I think as a whole, our society has worked very hard to kind of tamp it down.
Yeah.
But when you and I were in school, bullying was rampant.
It was. And it wasn't bullying you from the couch on a social media app, which is terrible today. I get it.
It is. It is terrible.
But this was like the bullies were in your face.
Yeah. And they would pick on people for just about anything.
Yeah. That would be rough as a boy or girl, but as a girl to have your hair coming out.
Yeah.
It would be tough.
It would be very hard. She was a reserved person, Christine, and struggled during her first few years of high school. She was insecure about her appearance because of her alopecia. Rachael and Tiffany befriended Kristen and took her under their wing for the first time. It seemed like Christine was liked and widely accepted by her peers. And we said it, right? Rachael and Tiffany were 2 of the most popular kids at their school.
Yeah. It's kind of like that show with Rachel McAdams and
Mean Girls?
Mean Girls. Yeah.
In 2003, her classmates voted Christine Miss Irresistible. Christine's mother told 2020 they did it because they felt that she was the person who they just loved because of the way she was, the person she was. And so, I mean, it's a feel-good story. That part of it, here's a girl who's really struggling because of this condition she has. These 2 very popular girls take her under her wing, and from that point on, she seems to do well in school and she's liked and all of that. But now it's thought that she killed these 2 people, or at least had a hand in it. And investigators were faced with the question, why would Christine want to harm the girls who were kind to her during that difficult time in her life?
Yeah, I mean, because it wasn't like how it was for you in school when you were voted Mr. Resistible. She was voted Ms. Irresistible by her friends.
Yeah, I was actually very resistible for quite a time there.
Still are.
Thank you. Thank you very much. But it's a real dilemma, right? It doesn't seem like she would be the first person to pop off the list or off the page as someone who wanted to do harm to these 2 people.
Yeah, it's not adding up right now.
Investigators soon identified their second suspect as Christine's ex-boyfriend, Christopher Snyder, who was 21 years old in 2003. Investigators believe that Christine and Christopher came to Tiffany's house to buy drugs from Adelbert and Marcus, but something went wrong. that led to the shooting. After receiving the tip, police secured a warrant for Christine's arrest in San Antonio, where she had been staying in a hotel with her husband, Stanley Justin Rupp. So this is kind of, interesting from this standpoint in that, 3 years have gone by, right? Certain people have gone on with their lives.
Right.
Christy has gotten married to a different guy, not the guy who was her boyfriend back in 2003.
Yeah, I guess if you don't have a conscience, you can do that. You can move on with your life.
Well, even if you do, I guess short of giving yourself up, what else can you do? Now, it might haunt you. It might eat at you every day. I think to a lot of criminals it doesn't, but I don't know about Christine. Stanley met Christine at a drug treatment center in November 2004. They got married 4 months later. It was later revealed that Stanley was the one who called Crimestoppers.
At the end of the day, he had to do the right thing.
Which is amazing. It always is, because it's one thing to do the right thing when it's easy. How easy is it, though, to do the right thing and report a crime that your wife was involved in before you met her?
I mean, it changes how you view that person.
I know it would for me.
Yeah, I mean, I fell in love with what I thought was this person, but you're this person. And if I would have known that ahead of time, I would have never been over here with you and married you.
So Christine vaguely told Stanley about an incident with her former boyfriend that resulted in the deaths of 4 people. On a later occasion, she elaborated that she and Christopher went to Tiffany's house in Clear Lake. Just before entering, Christopher handed her a gun that she carried in her purse. The intention was to take drugs and money, not hurt anyone. She claimed Christopher was the shooter. After fleeing the house, Christine told Christopher that she needed to make sure everyone was really dead. She returned to find Rachael choking on her own blood. She admitted to beating Rachael with her gun until she died.
I mean, why not just shoot her?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe she wasn't familiar with firearms. Maybe she didn't want to shoot a gun. I have no idea. But imagine being Stanley and your wife telling you this story. And the story is not just, hey, my ex-boyfriend killed some people. That's not the story. This is a plan. We went in there to do this, this, and this. Now, according to her, it got out of hand. They didn't mean to hurt anybody, but she admits to him that although she didn't shoot anybody, she beat Rachael until she was dead.
Yeah, I mean, I think unless you got a lot of skeletons in your closet too, you got to say, hey, I'm out.
I'm telling you, man, that's going to be a tough one to look past.
Yeah.
I know they say love is blind and all of that. Now, if you'd been married for 30 years, I don't know, maybe it changes things, maybe it doesn't. I think if you're just a few years into the relationship, this is a real bombshell. Actually, 30 years in might be a bigger bombshell, but you've developed a much stronger bond theoretically.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if you could handle it at any point. I really don't. Hey folks, if you're looking for a better way to bank, you got to check out Chime. They're changing the way people bank. It's smarter banking, built for you, and it's fee-free. Forget about the old school banking ways that charge you overdraft and monthly fees. Chime has smarter banking products for everyday people like MyPay, which gives you access to up to $500 of your paycheck anytime and getting paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit. There's no overdraft fees, no minimum balance fees, and no monthly fees. You can also earn up to 3% APY on savings. That's 7 times higher than a traditional bank. And it's rated 5 stars by US Today for customer service. They have real humans 24/7. And my younger self would have benefited so much from Chime. I remember in my 20s getting hit with what seemed to be a mountain of banking fees. With Chime, you don't have that. Chime is not just smarter banking, it's the most rewarding way to bank. Join the millions who are already banking fee-free today. It just takes a few minutes to sign up. Head to chime.com/TCAT. That's chime.com/TCATT.
Chime is a financial technology company, not a bank. Banking services, a secure Chime Visa credit card, and MyPay line of credit provided by the Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A. MyPay eligibility requirements apply, and credit limit ranges $20 to $500. Optional services and products may have fees or charges. See chime.com/fees info. Advertised annual percentage yield with Chime Plus status only. Otherwise, 1.00% APY applies. No min balance required. Chime card on-time payment history may have a positive impact on your credit score. Results may vary. See chime.com for details and applicable terms.
Christine was arrested on July 19, 2006. When officers entered the room, they saw that she and Stanley had been using heroin. There were hundreds of used syringes in the room. Christine was wearing a bloodstained t-shirt and had needle marks on her body.
So it sounds like the drug treatment didn't go well.
No, that's where they met, but apparently they continued to do drugs. That fact, though, is it even more amazing that Stanley made the phone call? Because you mentioned it, right? If you don't have a lot of skeletons in your closet, or you do, I think he had some. He had some not skeletons in his closet. They were doing criminal stuff right then and there.
Yeah. I think maybe for him too, when you come out of rehab, you need stability. And what's not stable is when you find out that the woman you married committed multiple murders. That's going to mess with you.
Yeah, I think it would be tough in any situation, but maybe more so in that one. But this sounds like just a horrible situation. Right there in this room, hundreds of used syringes. And she's wearing a bloodstained t-shirt with needle marks all up and down her body.
Well, when you're doing drugs like that, you just have no care, about your appearance and things around you. And
yeah, I can only imagine. Christine agreed to a videotaped interview. In this first interview, she admitted to driving Christopher to Tiffany's home. They went there to buy drugs, but they made a return trip. When Christopher complained about forgetting something, Christine insisted that Christopher went into the house by himself on both occasions while she remained in the car. When he returned the second time, she saw him running with a gun in his hands. She denied hearing any gunshots. The questioning ended, but Christine remained alone in the room with the recorder still going. She began to deteriorate and appeared weak and sick. The recording ended when she requested to see a nurse.
She probably started thinking about that day and what she had done and seen.
And there's also the effects of the heroin use. Sure. and all of that. But, what I want to talk about is her side of the story, right? Because it's always fascinating to hear two sides of a story when you have multiple people involved, or three sides, or however many people there are to have sides. Because it's going to be interesting to what Christopher has to say, because she's basically putting it all on him. And to investigators, she's not admitting to even going inside the house.
Yeah.
Let alone beating Rachael to death after she had been shot.
She's kind of acting like she's a victim too.
Yeah. Christine was transported to the hospital where she reported that she was experiencing heroin withdrawal. She told doctors she was accustomed to taking heroin every 10 to 15 minutes. And her last injection was at 10 a.m.
Well, there you go with 100 plus needles around her. So that would make sense.
I had no idea that was even a possibility. I remember, in the days where people smoked a lot.
Yeah.
Very common for someone to light one up as soon as they put the one out, or at the very least every 10 to 15 minutes, right? Have a cigarette. But heroin is that's a different animal. I'm not saying cigarettes are good for you by any means, but heroin every 10 to 15 minutes.
It's a high level addiction.
It is. Number one, the fact that you have to use the needle on yourself that often. But number two, let's talk about the cost of that much heroin, that daily habit. Where are you getting that money?
Well, either you're selling things, or you're selling yourself, or you're robbing.
At 5:30, she was given a dose of morphine and methadone. Christine was questioned again that evening at the hospital. Once again, she denied ever entering the home, but said there was a fight inside, and Christopher admitted to shooting all 4 victims. Christine was flown to Houston later that evening after she was discharged from the hospital. She had an unrecorded interview on the afternoon of July 20th and asked to see a doctor. She was taken to the hospital and again treated for heroin withdrawal. She was discharged late that evening and taken back to police headquarters. She had a final videotaped interrogation at 11:38 p.m. During this interview, she claimed Christopher forced her to go inside with him. When they returned to the house, he made her hold one of his guns. She denied aiming at anyone, but said Christopher put his hand over hers and pulled the trigger a number of times while she held the gun in her hand. So here we have the changing story, which always has to be analyzed.
Sure it does.
We start off with, I was never even inside the home, to, I was inside the home, but Christopher made me go. He even went as far as forcing me to hold the gun in his hand while he wrapped his hand around it and pulled the trigger.
Yeah, I mean, before that, she said he went in and he killed all 4 people. Now they're both in there and he's forcing his hand on her hand and making her pull the trigger. But, you know, the problem I see with this is that there's 4 people. And unless you're like super experienced.
And a really quick shot.
Yeah, and a good shot.
I
don't think you're going to get all 4 people by yourself.
And let's not forget, it was said that some of these people never even got off the couch.
Yeah, it's like they didn't even have the opportunity to move.
Yeah, so it does make you question whether one person could have done all that in the way that it's thought that it went down.
I mean, unless they were all, and I think it would have been in the reports, you know, from the police, unless they were all on heroin and they couldn't move.
And that's a possibility. We don't know. On July 21st, 2006, the Houston Police Department announced that capital murder charges had been filed against Christine Paolia and Christopher Snyder. But Christopher was still at large. He was on parole for a robbery conviction in Kentucky, but authorities determined he fled to Greenville, South Carolina. A body believed to be that of Christopher Snyder was found in Greenville, South Carolina on August 5th, 2006. He had been in Greenville for about 3 weeks and was living with a 36-year-old woman he met on MySpace.
The old MySpace.
Yeah, I was never, you know me, I've never been a huge social media person.
Yeah.
I never had a MySpace page. So I have no idea what it was even. I know it was kind of like a Facebook or something like that.
Kind of.
But it was said that Christopher was last seen on July 20th. Authorities believe a relative warned him there was a warrant out for his arrest in connection with the murders. That day, Christopher fought with his girlfriend about the warrants in Texas. He told her he was wanted for homicide and took several bottles of painkillers before he left her house on foot, wearing only a shirt and shorts. Jerry Reed, the woman's friend, told the Chronicle she didn't have a clue he was a suspect in the murders. The woman told him she met Christopher months earlier, and he briefly visited her from Texas several weeks ago. She also visited Texas before Christopher decided to move. Okay, so this is someone that, you know, you started talking to on MySpace. You hit it off. You've met in person a couple of times. Now he's in South Carolina living with you, and all of a sudden you find out that he's wanted for murder.
It's going to change some things.
It also goes back to that old question, do you really know who you're talking to online? For that matter, do you really know anybody?
Well, that's a good point.
When a relationship first starts, if you're meeting them out of the blue for the, you know, it's not like you went to school with them your whole life.
Yeah.
You've worked with them for years and years and years. If you just meet somebody at a bar randomly, what do you really know about that person?
Well, we all have a history.
Yeah. And we've probably all been in that situation in the past.
Yeah.
Where you meet someone, you hit it off. maybe even go home and, have a few Coca-Colas and a little rumpus room action, but
wake up in handcuffs and is that where you were going?
And only your boxers and your wallet and clothes are gone.
Yeah.
And you're handcuffed to the bed. But, what are the chances that you're taking home or you're going home with a killer? That's a scary thought. But you know what? We don't think about that when we're 20.
No, we don't.
Or 21 or whatever.
We're just happy someone wants to take us home.
Absolutely. Christopher's body was found in a wooded area across the street from his girlfriend's house. A canine team searched the area after Houston police learned from a family member that Christopher made comments in the past that would suggest suicide as an option. Police suspected Christopher may have overdosed on the pills he took from his girlfriend. So, it does sound to me like he was made aware that police were looking for him. They had tied him to these murders, and he made the decision that he was going to end his life.
Yeah. Didn't want to have to go through
whatever was about to come.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what it seems like to me. In July 2007, Stanley Rod did an interview with the Houston Chronicle and shared previously unpublicized details of her confession. He said that as part of his 12-step recovery program, he had to do what was right, which meant sharing what he knew. He also said that Christine's story gave him nightmares.
I bet it did.
Especially if you're sleeping next to the person who told you the story. Christine and Stanley married in March 2005. He didn't recall the exact date. She told him what happened, but it happened while they were living in a hotel in San Antonio between the fall of 2005 and the spring of 2006. So that would have been after they got married.
Yeah.
Which is important.
Yeah.
If he would have married her after that, okay. I got to pause a little bit there. But
she probably felt comfortable, like, hey, we're married now. I'm going to tell you something.
He can't testify against me, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe she thought that.
He told the Chronicle, when she mentioned it to me, it was so overwhelming. I couldn't believe she was the person I married. I didn't understand it. It was so much of a shock, and I was in denial. And I think anybody whose wife or husband, right, spouse, came at them all of a sudden and said, hey, I want to tell you this story that involves the murder of 4 people. And I was there and to some degree involved. Now, she minimized her involvement.
Sure she did.
I think shock is an understatement.
Yeah.
I don't even know what the word or feeling would be. Christine told him that she and Christopher went to Tiffany's house on the afternoon of July 18, 2003. Instead of parking in the driveway, they parked at the end of the street. They were let in because Christine knew the victims. According to Stanley, their intention was to hang out and do drugs. Once inside, Christine went to another part of the house with Rachael while the rest of the group sat in the living room. When the girls returned, Christopher was holding a gun on Marcus, Adelbert, and Tiffany, who were sitting on a couch. Christine claimed she didn't know what happened that led Christopher to draw the gun. They were pleading for their lives, telling Christopher he could take what he wanted and asking him to leave. They didn't try to fight him verbally or physically. Christine pulled a gun from her purse, which Christopher gave her before they went inside. Christopher fired the first shot. He killed Marcus and Adelbert, and then Christine shot the girls. They left the home with a bag of drugs.
All that for a bag of drugs.
So, let's break down this story that Stanley is relaying and compare it to the story that Christine told investigators. It is very much different.
It is.
This has her equally culpable as Christopher, right? Christopher killed the 2 men. Christine killed the 2 girls. They knew that 3 of the victims were dead, but Christine mentioned that they needed to go back and make sure everyone was dead. According to Stanley, Rachael was on the floor, choking on her own blood. She was dying. That's what bothers me the most. Christine saw Rachael like that, and she beat Rachael to death. Christine cried while doing it. I don't know if she felt she had to do it. she beat her friend to death. I mean, this is powerful stuff if true. And I think if you're weighing the truthfulness on a scale and you have Stanley on one side and you have Christine on the other, I mean, who do you feel is more likely to be telling the truth?
Stanley doesn't have a reason to lie.
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't really have to cover his ass, right? The way that Christine does.
And I still don't get why she had to beat poor Rachael at that time. I mean, she beat her with a gun. Why didn't you just go ahead and shoot her and have it be over so she didn't continue to suffer?
Or maybe pick up the phone and call 911 right before you leave.
Yeah, that would have been nice,
and
but
maybe she could have been saved. Now, there's no guarantee. She might have been to the point where nobody could have saved her life. The Chronicle reported that Rachael tried to call 911 on her cell phone at 3:12 p.m. Christine clocked into work shortly before 4 p.m. that afternoon. And to me, that's amazing. You could shoot two of your friends and beat one of them to death while she was dying. And then within an hour, you're clocked in at work like nothing happened.
I still got to work. I got to get there.
The Chronicle noted that Stanley's account differed from what Christine told police. Stanley also talked about his and Christine's drug use. He said they were spending about $10,000 on drugs. That money was part of Christine's inheritance she received after her father died. So we asked the question, right? How much would that cost? How do you pay for all those drugs? Well, now we're getting the answer.
Yeah, she was just going through her inheritance.
Stanley was on probation at the time of his interview for failure to appear. He was not charged with heroin possession. So, I mean, I just said, who do you believe? I think we do have to take into account that, right, Stanley wasn't quite walking the straight and narrow.
Right.
But I guess what would be his motive for lying? Unless it was to try to get out of some charge. And I guess that is a possibility.
I mean, it is a possibility, but I think kind of unlikely.
Opening statements in Christine Paolia's capital murder trial began on September 30th, 2008. Prosecutors said Christine and her then boyfriend, Christopher Snyder, gunned down the four victims on July 18th, 2003, after Christine shot Rachael, who was supposed to be her best friend. She returned to the home and beat her to death with her gun as she was crawling to the phone to call 911. Testimony would show that Rachael asked Christine, "Why are you doing this to me?" before she was beaten to death. And that's heartbreaking. I mean, this is a person that you thought was your friend. I mean, we mentioned it, right? These two girls had gone out of their way to take Christine under their wing.
Yeah, I mean, they befriended her, made her a popular girl at their school.
The defense disputed the allegations and said Christine was befriended by Rachael and Tiffany, but was influenced by bad guys who became her boyfriends. Christine's attorney described her as a lost, sad little girl, alone in the world, per the Houston Chronicle.
Well, I mean, that can happen.
It can happen. I think the other thing that really jumps out to me here is that, Christopher Snyder is no longer alive. So he can't tell his side of the story. And we don't know what he would have said. According to the defense, Christopher Snyder tricked Marcus Precella out of drugs and then took Christine back to the house to show her he wasn't scared. When they arrived, Christopher opened fire with a 9mm semi-automatic pistol with 16 bullets. He jammed a .38 caliber revolver into Christine's stomach to try to force her to help. And that goes back to my statement. The defense can say pretty much anything about Christopher because he can't be questioned.
He can't dispute it.
So he can't deny, nor can he corroborate anything. The defense also suggested that Christine's husband reported her to claim the reward money and further alleged that Stanley made a deal with the state to testify falsely against Christine so he would not be prosecuted on drug charges. And I think Whether it's true or not, that's a really good defense to make, because I did ask the question, right? What is his motive for turning Christine in?
Yeah, what's his gain?
He was addicted to heroin.
Yeah.
So you could argue that maybe the inheritance money was running out or had run out, and he could get a bunch of money,
100,000
in reward money. Or you could argue that, okay, they're found with a bunch of drugs in the hotel room, and the reason why he wasn't prosecuted or charged with the heroin is because he rolled over on Christine.
And it could have helped his case with all the drugs in the room. You know, he did come forward with what he knew, and they could have said, you know what, we're not going to charge you with this. Like, we know that they didn't charge him.
Now, the counter argument to that for me is that he called the Crimestoppers number before that.
Right.
So I think if you're the prosecution, right, you gotta play that angle up. Retired police sergeant Tom Ladd testified that by looking at the position of Rachel's body and other evidence, he thought she opened the door to the killers and tried to run away from them. He said she saw something that scared her and she broke and ran. He described it as a gory scene, saying all of the victims had suffered multiple gunshot wounds. Sanchez and Rowell appeared not to have been able to get off the couch they were sitting on. 2 eyewitnesses placed Christine at the scene of the crime. Michelle and Craig Lackner lived next door to Tiffany. They testified that on the day of the shooting, they both saw a young man and woman casually walk down the street and approach Tiffany's house. In court, they identified Christine as the woman. They denied seeing her with a gun, but she was carrying a purse. They also picked Christopher out of a photo lineup. Christine's husband, Stanley, was a key prosecution witness. He testified about Christine's confession and calling Crimestoppers to turn her in. Kim Downs, the state firearms examiner, testified that bullets from 2 guns were found at the scene and found in the bodies of Tiffany and Marcus. These bullets were traced to 2 handguns found in Louisville, Kentucky, in a safe inside the home of Christopher Snyder's stepfather.
It always amazes me that people keep the guns that were used in a murder.
Yeah, it does me too, because guns, like we said before, are fairly easy to dispose of.
Yeah.
You know, there's large bodies of water. There's the Godfather 2 route where you just take the gun apart and put bits and pieces down chimneys as you run across the rooftops. But yeah, I don't know. They must think, well, they're never going to connect me, and so there's no reason to get rid of it. But what does that do? Yeah, the guns were found in a safe that belonged to his stepfather. But it's also confirmed that 2 guns were used at the scene. Now, how many perpetrators use 2 different guns? I don't think many.
No. Pretty rare.
Yeah, I think if you have 2 people at the scene, it's pretty reasonable to conclude that each one of those persons fired a separate gun. Defense psychiatrist Dr. George Glass testified that Christine was going through heroin withdrawals. When she gave statements to police, she would have told investigators anything, as long as she thought it would help her get drugs to relieve her pain. Hospital records he reviewed stated that Christine was addicted to heroin. In her videotape statements, she appeared to be having withdrawal symptoms. Glass also said that Christine had a poor self-image. Both Christine and her mother told him that she lost her hair as a child and was teased at school for wearing wigs. Jurors viewed Christine's statement, in which she told police that Christopher was responsible. She accompanied him to the house to buy drugs, and the shootings took place when they returned. She claimed she didn't know he intended to shoot the victims. She did not go inside when Christopher went to the house the first time to buy drugs from Marcus. They returned to the home later that afternoon, but this time they parked down the street and Christopher gave her a gun. They were led into the house and Christopher and Marcus started arguing. Christine said, per the Houston Chronicle, "I was holding the gun down. I didn't want to point it at anybody. I'd never even touched a gun before. I heard the first gunshot. I didn't think it hit anyone. She was crouched behind a pillar. Christine recalled, "I felt so scared, I heard another one go off. The girls started screaming. It felt like I could hear bubble wrap pop. It was pop, 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 pop." The gunfire continued, and Christopher summoned her to the living room. She said, "He took my gun and held it in my hand. He had my hand on the handle. The gun went off, and according to Christine, she said, it felt like a million times." She ran out of the house and Christopher followed. They drove around Clear Lake before she went to work at 4 p.m. She later started freaking out after finding specks of blood on her hand. So, the one thing I did want to talk about is, her heroin addiction, the withdrawals. At one point, it did say that they had given her both morphine and methadone. And I just wonder, was she kind of high when she was being interviewed? And how does that play?
I think it can make a difference in how you are interviewed.
Or if she's just going through withdrawals and is not on those drugs. Either way, how does that affect the statements that she made?
I think it could be a factor.
So basically what it came down to, Gibbs, in large part, right, is that the jury would have to compare the differences between her statement and the testimony of her husband. And let's face it, a lot of trials come down to this. Maybe it's not husband versus wife, but it could be the state's expert versus the defense's expert. Who does the jury believe is telling the truth? In closing arguments, defense attorney Mike DeGuerin suggested that Christopher was solely responsible. He killed the victims while Christine hid. He forced her into the living area and held her hand on the gun handle as it fired. The defense once again referred to the alleged plea deal with Stanley, but the prosecution objected, and the court sustained that objection. Prosecutor Rob Fryer said Christopher was not the only one to blame. He asked the jurors, could this horrible event have happened without Christine? He said, of course not. And it's a good point to make, right? Even though there are differing versions on who shot who and who pulled the trigger and all of that, the one version that everybody did kind of stick with was that the reason why they got into the house in the first place was because of Christine.
Yeah.
Now, her argument was that she didn't know that he was going to kill her. I think if you're a juror, maybe one question you're asking is, if that's the truth, why are you putting a gun in your purse? Why do you even need it?
That's a good point.
On October 13th, 2008, Christine Paella was found guilty of capital murder. She received an automatic life sentence. Christine avoided a potential death sentence because she was only 17 years old at the time of the murder. And you almost forget about that because of how brutal these murders were and what she is said to have done, right? If she shot these two girls, which were reportedly her friends, and then beat Rachael to death as she was dying, that would be rough for anyone to do.
Right.
But then you think about a 17-year-old doing it. That's brutal. One juror revealed that he was among four who initially voted for acquittal, but his questions were answered during discussions. He noted there was a lot of contradiction in her stories in the 3 interviews she gave to police, and there were. Right? There's no doubt about it. She changed her stories multiple times.
That's always a problem.
And I think as a juror, you have to take that into consideration, right? If your third version is the truth, why wasn't that your first version?
Right. I mean, I get it. She can argue, well, I was going through heroin withdrawal, or I was on, methadone and morphine, so I wasn't myself. But why 3 times then?
Yeah. I mean, it's a question that has to be asked. The families of the victims told the Houston Chronicle that the verdict would allow them to move forward with their lives. So as we wrap this one up, Gibbs, Christine is now 40 years old. She's still incarcerated in Texas. and she's not eligible for parole until 2046.
I mean, you said something interesting here. The families of the victims, were finally able to move forward with their lives. It took a while.
It did.
And they had to relive this and go through this, and I'm sure it wasn't easy. And, they were robbed of what their family members might have done later in life.
And just the opportunity to be with them.
Yeah.
That's something you can never forget, because once that's gone, it's gone. You can't get that back. It's never coming back. I mean, this is a case like many are. It's not one of those that's cut and dry, right? There is no one piece of evidence that conclusively you would say just absolutely points to, well, it happened this way. So I think you have to take all the evidence into account,
right?
As I'm sure jurors did. I thought it was interesting that 4 of them voted to acquit right off the bat. And then slowly during discussions, some of the questions that they had were, they said, answered, and they eventually got to the guilty verdict. That just shows you right there. There was no slam dunk.
No. I mean, I can see where you might at first seem sympathetic towards her, but as you learn more, then you kind of distance yourself from that.
Well, and it's just, who do you believe more? Do you believe her and her 3 different stories, or do you believe the way that the evidence points, and do you believe Stanley and his story?
Yeah.
Because I think his story does line up a little more with the evidence, right? 4 people shot, and it's all done by Christopher. I'm not saying it couldn't happen.
It's just more unlikely that it would.
I think it is. Be much easier to control 4 people if 2 people both had guns out. And then you look at some of the ballistics and all of that. Obviously, we don't get to hear or see all the evidence, but I think as a juror, I would be leaning towards, Christine not being all that truthful in her statements. And the fact that you have to tell 3 different ones does not help me.
Yeah.
That's it for our episode on the Clear Lake murders. We got a couple voicemails. Gibbs, you want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Hey, guys. This is Paul from Las Vegas, Nevada. Man, I love the podcast, but you guys pander to women so hard. You are some real bitches when it comes to that. But, yeah, anyways, Team Gibby. Fuck you, Mike.
I'm not going to lie. That made me laugh when I first heard it.
It did.
And I thought, okay, I could go one of 2 ways. I can not put it on, but no, I'm going to, because I feel like all of the voicemails that we have are complimentary. It's very rare that somebody calls in and says something even somewhat negative. Now, I get emails all the time with negative stuff.
Sure you do.
But I thought it was interesting because he said, I love the podcast, but let me tell you this and this. Yeah. And then, oh, by the way, F you, Mike.
Well, hey, nothing wrong with someone wanting to give us their opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe
we don't have to agree with it. But
no. Maybe he'll be out in Vegas and stop by.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Come see us.
Yes.
Hey, guys, this is Dana Schwartz from Houston, Texas. I just wanted to let you guys know that I am 4.5 years sober, actually this month, and True Crime All the Time Unsolved and True Crime All the Time has actually really helped me with my sobriety. And just thought you guys should know, keep your own time ticking, keep your head on a swivel. And I'm both y'all's team. I'll put both y'all in my pocket. Y'all take care now. Spread the love.
You say you were in his pocket?
Yeah. He said he would put both of us in there.
Oh, put both of us in his pocket.
Had to be 2 different pockets because I'm not going in the same pocket with you.
No way. No
but
way.
Seriously, what I will say is congrats, man. That is awesome. Anytime I think, someone can say, I've been sober for X.
Yeah.
That's a milestone. Yeah. And then it becomes another milestone when you say that it's longer, right? however you celebrate it, in months, 6 months, years, at some point, it's probably years, but congrats to you, man, because I think it's a huge achievement.
Yeah, it's such a struggle, and to get through that day by day.
It is.
That's
and
what
it
is.
Never goes away.
Yeah. Keep fighting.
Yeah. Props to you, man. All right, buddy, that is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time. So for Mike
And Gibby.
Stay safe and keep your own time ticking.